computer, and we are going. Okay. Good Sunday morning. It is Sunday, April the 5th. I am Lisa Bien doing a Zoom show with taking a twist of my show, Your Best Life with Lisa, that is on templetv.net. You can check out all my shows on templetv.net. But I am here in my living room with such a beautiful soul. You know, I always say that I have the best job ever, and this is one of my favorite things to do is just to talk to people and interview them. And you know what, Colleen, you and I met, Colleen St. Michael and I, we met how many years ago? Would you say about 10 years ago?
About 10 years ago. We were both speakers at a leadership event.
And it was an amazing event.
But
it was it's a life connection, truly a life connection. And you've been my spiritual guide, and I've reached out to you many a times in my life where I felt that I needed more of a spiritual connection. We're both big believers in spirituality and helping people get through their mindset. So I know you've been busy. I know you wrote a book, and that's gotten launched. I want to hear about your book today. I want to hear about your new podcast. And then at the end, if we could, I'd like to give the people who are watching the interview some tips on maybe what they can do for the next couple weeks to help them with their mindset. How's that sound?
Sounds amazing. Thanks for
having me.
I love you. And I love this, the arena we're in right now. And I think it's taken a lot of people out of our comfort zones. Like you and I talked about even before we went live, it's like I'm historically a Flintstone when it comes to technology, and I still like my tablet and my stone chisel. So this is taking us all out of our comfort zone, and we're recreating this new comfort zone as we're all globally learning how to redefine normal. And so, you know, I'm actually really thankful because these are all things I wanted to do.
You and me both. And have you caught some of my lives? I'm like, wait, I'm live. No, I'm not live anymore.
Yeah, and it's, you know, your humor has always been your honesty. And so my humor has always been my honesty because, you know, nobody needs to believe that anyone is perfect at everything. And it's like we all have our niche. And I believe that if I can't laugh at my own self, you know, and it helps you to get out of your own way when you can actually acknowledge that, you know, we're all infants at some stage, right? So it's not just the infancy of, you know, coming into the world and learning how to walk and learning how to roll over. We're infants at every new phase that we're in front of. So our global world is an infant at this phase in how to realign and reset and then redesign their life according to what we're gaining in the information that we are sitting with as we are in our homes. So, you know, and that's
the reset.
It is an intentional reset. And, you know, some, you know, in the spiritual community, we call it awakening, because people are coming from that sleep-like state where they have been living that rat race. You know,
kids I say with their faces and I say with their heads down. I always say there's two kinds of people. There's the person that kind of lives with their head down, staring at the world as, you know, they're ongoing, and then there's the people that you and I are like, we looked up and we continue to awake every single day. We're getting more alive.
It's like you know, the book I launched, it was called The Other Side of Addiction, the Afterlife. And because we're in the middle of another epidemic, which is loss from opioids, fentanyl, it's the addiction losses that we've had are just growing. And so we have not only this addiction, but now we have all of the family and friends who, what do you do now after the addiction? So as my work for the last decade as a medium and a spiritual guide, I sat with so many thousands of families, and I thought there's this myth around the afterlife, and we're not shown how to move through the processes of what we feel when someone passes, because we're shown how to build connections. We're shown in life how to build love, build strength, build friendship, build communication, but we're not shown how do we live without that? How do we live without that person, not only experiencing with an addiction loss, but just loss in general?
And I would also add that I think that, and you would probably agree with me, when we use the word addiction, I think a lot of people automatically go to drug addiction. There's
Mhm.
many different addictions that exist in today's world.
We are all living addicts on some level, whether it's a food addict, a gossip addict, a social media addict, something where we're taking ourselves out of our source, which is our natural alignment, our intuitive connection of wholeness, which is mind, body, and spirit. And so it's that, whole package coming into life and then executing the steps that are, GPS programmed into our life print, right? So this book specifically works with families of addiction because I saw that it had a very different imprint, because grieving families might go to a grief group and not be welcome because there's judgment, because the judgment is, oh, well, they had a choice. They chose to use. Like, my child didn't have a choice. And we need to stop these stigmas and start just connecting in, right? So it's like, and everybody's always, asking me, well, what is your connection? Who have you lost? And I haven't lost anyone to addiction. I don't have drug addiction in my world, but it's everywhere in my world because I'm a part of this world. And that's my intention, is trying to bring the information, not speculation of what people think is the afterlife. Judgment's a human condition. It's not a soul condition. So all souls are loved and welcome, just as they are in this world, they are in the next life.
So it's I'm me. I'm full. What you see is what you get. I haven't read your book yet. It's on my list of things to do. Just like but I was so excited when Cindy said that you would agree to be with me on this show. And when when I'm back in Temple, we're going to have you on set as well. Just such a big fan of yours, and I see that you're doing a podcast, and your podcast is just launching now, correct?
So the first episode as of now will be launching on 4/20/20. So I'm excited. It's called La Vayom, Living Change with Colleen St. because La Vayom means change in Danish. And so, I have sat in front of people for 10 years and sat with myself with the word change. And there's like this resistance that kicks in, and I always said, like, if I go to an airport and the woman at the counter says to me, I'm going to upgrade your flight, I feel like super. I'm like, oh, thank you. If she told me,
we feel so special when they're like, well, guess what, Lisa, you made it to first class. You're like, woo! The first time I ever got upgraded, it was a 45-minute flight. I was like, what?
Yeah. But if I said to you, Lisa, I'm going to change your flight, you'd be like, what's wrong with the plane?
Oh,
so
interesting. You're
I'm
right.
using the same word change, and we're using it as an upgrade, and now we're super special. We hit that level. If I tell you we're changing it, what the heck's wrong with the plane? Are we going down? So it's like, it's
interesting.
Trigger instinctually within us that we just assume that if we hear the word change, that it means something's wrong.
Well, our brains are trained to go negative, right? You and I both. We both do so much research, and I'm always fascinated because I'm always reading. My friends make fun of me because I'm always reading, the books about like self-help and becoming the best self, because that's my passion, my thing. And they want to, they read romance novels, which is great. But anyway, so when I first
a different romance you're forming, right? Because the greatest love I ever found was the romance with myself.
Oh my God, isn't that the truth?
Self-help books that you're reading, you are reading romance novels because you're starting to, and people always talk about self-love, got to jump on self-love. Well, you and I both know that's a hard pill to swallow when you're like when you're on the ground and you feel there's this unworthiness and you feel like this disconnect because everything you knew is not validating feeling loved, right? So
oh my God. Yes. All your old patterns, all your old things. It's not validating. It's like your mind. I always tell people that you have to retrain your mind, basically. It's almost like doing when you take a shirt and you take it inside out, it's what you're doing to your mind and your body and your soul to really get to know who you are and like who you are and get comfortable with who you are. So before you can even get to that point of self-love, you got to look at what's not working for you and redirect it.
You have to, and that's the part where it's like, I always tell my students or whomever I'm speaking to, like, don't kill yourself with self-love. And I know that's going to probably go against everything that everybody is telling you to do, but you have to like imagine that we meet each other on the street, right? You're just not going to find somebody like, oh my God, I love you, right? So we're not connected with ourselves when we're not living in that state of self-love. So it's like we're meeting ourselves for the first time, right? Like anything else, I have to see if I like you. I have to see now, I have to see if I'm like wanting to take this relationship further. Like I want to see, okay, well now I'm ready to commit to you more, right? So that's how we do that slow weave, right?
Excuse me 1 second.
Into self-love.
My neighborhood, I apologize. Can you hear the horns?
I can't.
My neighborhood is having some type of parade right now. Lots of horns are happening, so I apologize. It just
Can't hear it.
Oh, good. Okay. I wanted to make sure you couldn't hear it. I'm sorry. Okay. I
No,
apologize. Go ahead. We were talking about self-love. I apologize.
No, it's just, but it's that same thing. It's like, when you heard it, you knew it, right? You knew it, but you weren't, it's almost like, well, if you give me the directions, I'll follow them. But
I think that's an interesting point. I remember once, about 10 years ago, my girlfriend Susan, in fact, said to me, you need to go and have the greatest love affair of all. And I was like, really? This is like after my second divorce was final. I was like, I don't need a love affair. And she was like, no, with yourself. Now, she gave me the greatest advice of all. She told me to go have a love affair with myself. But she didn't give me the tools or the strategies of which to do it. So I kind of went on my own journey and path. It doesn't mean that mine was right or better or whatever. But I went on this.
But yours was instinctual to what it was that your fingerprints needed.
Right.
To find that love affair. Like I always felt that investigation, right? Like everything is about an investigation. There's a crime inside.
I love that. There's a crime inside and we have to figure it out. We have to be our own detective. We have to be our own personal detective. I think that's amazing and it's so true. I mean, listen, when I was, I have a few books out. And so my first book, I'll never forget, they said, come up with your strategy. How did you do it? And I'm like, I don't really know. I'm like, I don't really know. I just kind of did it, and they're like, no, you need a strategy. Your book needs to have a strategy. So I have these 4 steps that, there's tips almost, how to get off the treadmill of life and then there are tips. But I think it's all about finding your way and, how you make your path. But I think the biggest and most important step or advice that we could probably give people, Colleen, is to just have enough confidence in the fact that you deserve to go on this journey and believe that you go on it.
And that part was the most, I think, difficult for me because I had to start with a small mantra, right? So I actually didn't believe the whole thing when I started it, but I was willing to say that where I was at was not proving me any proof of a quality of life. So I had to be willing. And my first willingness was, I'm worthy. And I would repeat it over and over and over again. And I would write it like a punished schoolgirl. Every morning I would get up and write, I'm worthy, I'm worthy, I'm worthy, I'm worthy. So it became, and that's how it is. It's these slow, subtle shifts that start to change the pattern because your ego cannot grab a hold of very short sentences, right? It can't manipulate it. So that's why when we're doing affirmations, we want to do them in small segments because the ego can't take that away and destroy it, right? The ego's not your amigo. It's the voice that's, had that microphone and it's been putting you down for a good long time and you've been a loyal subject to it. So you believed it.
I remember I was in therapy once and I was talking to, I'm a big believer, I share my story all the time and I share the importance of therapy. And I was talking to my therapist and one day he said to me, he said, why don't you believe that you deserve it? This was your, probably 10 years ago. And I said, I don't know. Like he made me realize that we all deserve it.
Yeah.
And I think I think once I realized that universally we all deserve to be happy, live in joy, and live our joy, our happiness. It doesn't mean there's no judgment. And I think that was like for me, the biggest aha, like I don't have to live according to how my friend lives, or I don't have to live according to how so-and-so lives. I get to be me, and I still remember I had a conversation with my uncle and I said something like, something about how I'm going to I was going to make a change, and he goes, I would, what would stop you? Nothing ever stopped you before. You've always lived very true to who you are. And I think that that's so key too, to live true to who we are once we embrace our true selves.
Right. I wholeheartedly agree, because, I tell people all the time, I was very successful living my life unhappy.
Oh, yes. We think we're really good at that point, right? But for me, it was after my second divorce and personal bankruptcy. I was like, wait, something's not working.
I was still successful because I was repetitively repeating a pattern.
Right, exactly.
That pattern was taking me in a direction, but I did have proof that I could be successful, right? So now it's shifting that, knowing that I can be successful, but shifting it in a direction on the other what if. Like, what if things are okay? And what if not just that doom and gloom kind of way? And it's like, I don't apologize for the road I walked before sitting in this seat, because that woman grew this woman. And through those experiences and through adversity, and we've talked about adversity before, is that adversity is not a horrible thing. It's really not, right? And it does help to strengthen, but it's how we respond to adversity is the temperature of it. So, and that's where, as an angel intuitive, it's understanding that every soul comes into this world with the abundance of health, wealth, love, and happiness. It's the human experience where we then separate, and then we start to become judge and jury of where we feel worthy of it. Mm-hmm. And to become
we judge ourselves. We end up judging ourselves, and we actually, like, part of my, you've heard me speak. Part of my saying is always become your own best friend. Don't say anything that you wouldn't say to your own best friend. And that, if you really stop and think about what you say to yourselves, most of it's judgment. It's I should, and then I change it, where, like, I work and I go, I'm really blessed that I get up every morning and I have a job. It's not, oh my God, I have to go to work. It's I get to go to work.
Well, this whole epidemic that's happening right now, this whole pandemic that's happening, this global pause, is truly a place where each and every one of us can step inside and just reconstruct some areas of our life. Mm-hmm. And having that disconnect from all of the things that historically would distract us, or that we could validate, would keep us away from putting that energy into misalignments in life, right? And so I had written this article not too long ago about being your own brand, right? And I just, share with people that if you were to look at a brand that you respect, like an influential brand, and they stood for, what do they stand for? What is their mission? What is their integrity? What are their practices, right? What is the brand? Now, if they were to stray from what it was that they proposed and sharing with us about their brand, it would create a lot of, people to feel irritated. It would create them to feel untrusting. It would create them to break away from supporting that brand. Well, this is our personal brand. And if you are a brand, your being is a brand, would you support your brand? Would you buy your brand based on what it is fundamentally that you are building in this moment? And if the answer is no, then forgive yourself for doing what you knew. And now it's time to go back and own the fact that contrast is an amazing teacher. Because contrast teaches us what we don't like. And when you know what you don't want, man, you have such a great set of tools to guide you in what you do want. Even if you don't have what that picture looks like completely, knowing what you don't want is an awesome tool to help navigate you moving forward. And that's where it's owning your own brand, being that own CEO. And what do you stand for? What does your brand represent? Person.
First of all, I love that, being your own brand and being your own CEO. And we have to wrap it up, only because I promised I would only just take a half hour of your time. I have another interview. But I still remember one day I was with this woman, and years ago, I was single and I wasn't meeting anybody. And she said to me, you are your own CEO. And you can't continue to date men that are not their own CEOs, right? And I remember that, like, oh my God, like, how you meet certain people and they give you advice and it kind of sticks with you. That was definitely a a moment in time that I felt like I got that cold water thrown on my face, and I was like,
We
oh
call
yeah.
that, and I had started a t-shirt line because it's something that for me, that's a wing slap.
I love it. That's a wing slap.
So years ago, I was like in my own way, and I kept hearing this information come through my intuition all over again. And I'm like, okay, Angel's like, what is it? And then finally it was like, oh,
it's a wing slap.
It's a wing slap. So I always say it's like moments where my loving team slaps me awake. And so I was like, quill of the eye, you know, like feather burn to the side. And, you know, it's a funny way to have your aha moment, but that was a wing slap moment where it just clicked. You heard it, you were aligned with it, and then you took intentional action to digest it and then execute it. So good job.
I love it. First of all, thank you so much for giving me like a half hour of your time. I love you.
Thank you. I love you.
You can come back and we can have we have to figure out how to do, maybe what we should figure out how to do is do a Facebook Live together and get some interaction from our folks on our, on Instagram and Facebook.
Sounds good.
So thank you for joining me. Thank you. Everybody have a great day and look for that wing slap moment.